Welcome to Talk Mental Health with Logan Noone. I have an interesting episode for you today. It's just going to be me. It's going to be a little bit short and quick. And what I'm going to be doing is answering questions that I've received in my messaging, whether that be on Instagram or Facebook. So today's going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge. Questions of all over. I encourage you to please continue sending me in questions. I'll periodically do episodes like this. And without further ado, let's get started. Now, really the question that I get, I think, the most is, hey, Logan, I recently was diagnosed with bipolar. My husband was recently diagnosed with schizophrenia. I have a friend who recently got diagnosed with anxiety, so forth and so, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What the hell should I do now that I'm just diagnosed? Now, I think getting diagnosed, that initial period for the first maybe 2 months, 3 months, is the most challenging. You're potentially adjusting to your new medication, but really the biggest adjustment is adjusting that you have an illness, you have a disorder that, with a lot of mental illness disorders, is probably lifelong. Not all mental health disorders are lifelong, but, how are you going to live your life now? What are you really going to do? And my suggestion really every time is to try to network with people who live with issues similar to yours. So this is obviously easier if you live in a metropolis area. But one of the best resources and organizations that I have found is called NAMI. That's NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. They put on support groups really for the whole country. And what's kind of cool about NAMI is they put on peer-to-peer support group meetings where you can go and talk to someone who also might have bipolar disorder, like yourself, or really for a variety of diseases. But they also put on specific family programs, meaning, okay, I'm a family member of someone with a mental illness. How can I best support them? And I remember my parents going to one of these NAMI family support meetings when I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder because they didn't know what the hell to do. Now, NAMI isn't the only organization. I would argue it's probably the largest, but also Mental Health America has resources. If you're listening internationally, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know as much about the international scene, but I simply just, whatever resources you can use to try to network and find other people with your disorder is the best way to start, I think, when you first get diagnosed, because you can talk to people that have had this disorder for years, learn how they learn to resolve their own issues, learn how they approach the system of mental health, because that sometimes can be challenging nonetheless, how to get an appointment with a psychiatrist, how to select a therapist. What do you do when you start to feel some side effects from medications? It can be extremely, extremely challenging. And really, my personal experience is I did attend some NAMI groups, and I did like them. My favorite group, though, that I've ever attended was this kind of informal organization out in Sacramento, California. And I found this group called Balance Bipolar Depression and Support Group on meetup.com, and I really think meetup.com is a great website. So if you log on to meetup.com and search in depression or mental health, I think you can find a great amount of resources. But like I said earlier, it's going to be easier if you live in a metropolis. But I attended that meeting quite a bit, especially when I was in the first year of being diagnosed. I learned so much. I am so thankful for that group. I hope that group isn't an anomaly. I hope that there's other groups out in other locations that exist quite like it. But that would be my advice if you're someone who has just been diagnosed with a mental illness and what the hell you should do. Okay, so the next question. All right, so the next question I get from a lot of pre-medical students or students that are going into a nursing field or really any graduate education is, Logan, I know you're pretty open about your mental illness. Did you put that on your application to medical school? I decided that I should, and it really kind of came down to a simple question. Could I tell my story, an enthusiastic story of why I wanted to go to medical school without disclosing my disorder, the answer to that question for me was no. I realized I can only actually tell this story and make it seem sincere because I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Like, I didn't randomly decide one day, like, insurance isn't for me, I'm going to go to medical school. Like, no. Like, there was this huge life-changing diagnosis that kind of altered the way I want to scope and change my career. So I think you have to ask yourself that question, like, can I present my application in a strong way, in a passionate way, and can I speak about this without disclosing my illness? Because I want to fight stigma, but you know what? I also encourage people to pursue their dreams of higher education, and sometimes admissions committees, it's almost easier if you don't say anything and don't raise any red flags. Now, if you are in a situation like me where you can't really tell your story without self-disclosing what you went through, then I do encourage you, disclose your story. However, when you are disclosing that story, you need to do it in the light, I am not a victim of this. I am a survivor of this. I am a warrior of this. I learned from this, and this experience is going to help out my future patients. So that's really kind of how I did it. Like, I lived through this. I don't feel bad about this. I don't need extra accommodations because of this. I just want to be a doctor because I think I'm going to be more sincere, more empathetic, more understanding, more compassionate to my future patients who succumb to mental illness. So that's what I would say. All right, next question. We're going to kind of get into the nit and gritty now, but this question is actually all the way from Iran, so kind of cool there. Thank you. I guess I have people in Iran that listen to the podcast, so pretty cool. So this question states, it's from a mother. I have a question about my son. Can he still work out in the gym despite taking his meds like Lamictal and Seroquel? He has bipolar 1 just like you, and I wanted to know, could he also lift weights while he's on Depakote? So my answers, this obviously has to do with specific medications. And let's break these down one by one kind of thing. Now, Lamictal and Depakote are both traditionally anti-seizure medications, but they work as mood stabilizers. So these medications in particular, you can absolutely work out on, and I would encourage you to, because it's going to be healthier for your body, but also healthier from your mental health. You know, there are proven benefits of exercising with weightlifting and also cardiovascular activities, reduces stress, improves mood, improves sleep. So all things that are absolutely crucial for mental health and improving your bipolar disorder can be handled with exercise. And there are no contraindications for taking Lamictal and Depakote while lifting. None at all. Just make sure you drink enough water. Now, also, the thing that's interesting about Depakote, Depakote is the medication I'm on. We'll talk about that a little bit further on later. But it's actually very motivational to try to get to the gym because Depakote is notorious for putting weight on your body. Absolutely notorious. So it might actually be an incentive, like, hey, like, I'm putting you on this medication that has been known to help people with bipolar disorder, but also put on a great amount of weight. You should probably start going to the gym. That exact sentence, I imagine I will utter thousands of times throughout my career because Depakote really, it does work well for bipolar patients. Now, Seroquel. So Seroquel is an atypical it's an antipsychotic medication. Okay? I know that kind of sounds scary, but essentially what that just means is it's working against dopaminergic receptors. So we're trying to block some of the dopamine receptors in your brain. Now, Seroquel, you can still lift on Seroquel, but you have to be actually a little bit more cautious with Seroquel, just because Seroquel is a little bit more sedating. People sometimes describe it as they sometimes can feel like just out of it, in a sense. A lot of times people take Seroquel right before they go to bed, and it helps them with sleep. So that's what I would say here. It's perfectly still safe to take Seroquel and lift weights, but I would just make sure that you lift weights first before taking your Seroquel. For the most part, Seroquel is taken late at night. Some people, of course, take it during the day, but I would not advise taking Seroquel and then go trying to bench press or squat 300 pounds. At least give yourself a good amount of time, and I would encourage you to take the Seroquel at night to help you out with your sleep, okay? But I still encourage all of my patients to lift weights. There are no contraindications. Just make sure you lift or drink a bunch of water. And thank you so much for reaching all the way out from Iran. That is pretty cool. All right, I have another international question. This question is all the way from a listener in Chile. They say, I also have bipolar disorder and feel very identified that you're inspiring me to talk about my mental health. Well, thank you, man from Chile. I would like to enter medicine and specialize in psychiatry. I wanted to thank you for doing your podcast on YouTube. Oh, wow, thank you. That was very nice. He's asking what dose of Depakote I take. Listen, I take 1,500 milligrams, but I don't see that that's going to help you in your management of your disorder at all. Because Depakote is really dosed on weight, okay? So I'm kind of a chunky fella. I actually could even take probably more than 1,500 milligrams of Depakote daily. But really, what you want to do is keep this dosage in close mind with your provider. You don't want to be changing your dosage on your own. It doesn't really make any sense. It's all based on weight. And, when you're on Depakote, it is metabolized by your liver. So what you should be doing is, I think the guideline, and I really should know this off the top of my head, I believe it's every 6 months to a year you should be getting your liver functioning tests. I think as you're on the medication longer, you don't have to do it as often, but I know that I'm overdue. I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but I'm not even taking my own advice. Like, if you're on Depakote, really what you want to be doing is not asking what dose of Depakote other people take, because that's not really relevant, but it's more like, okay, is this safe on my liver? Is this having negative effects on my liver? When is the last time that I had my liver functioning tests run? And that's alkaline phosphatase, AST. ALT is alkaline phosphatase, and AST. So you just want to get those levels read for your liver functioning if you're on Depakote. Next part of this question, have you ever taken any supplement to reverse the side effects of Depakote? So going back to my previous questions, really one of the biggest side effects of Depakote is weight gain. So not necessarily taking a supplement. I don't encourage anyone to take any weight loss supplements, but do it the old-fashioned way. Go exercise. You're most likely going to put on weight if you're taking Depakote. So exercise. Now, there are some other side effects of Depakote: nausea, vomiting, pancreatitis. Essentially, you should stay away from the booze if you're on Depakote, because it's metabolized from your liver. It's, it can wreak havoc on your stomach sometimes, and also your pancreas. Alcohol can do all those same things. So, listen, I'm not saying I'm perfect either. I still consume alcohol, but I really want to be mindful of how much I consume and know that, the medication I take every day for my bipolar disorder, something I really need to take, is having a negative impact on my liver. And lastly, Depakote. So let's say you're a woman, especially a pregnant woman, who has been using Depakote to manage their bipolar disorder. Practitioners actually encourage people who are pregnant, taking Depakote, hey, we got to maybe switch you to something else, because it can really have negative effects on spinal development and babies and coming out with spinal abnormalities. And so what they really think that's going on here is that when you take Depakote, your folate levels, something with metabolism, or it depletes the levels of folate in your body, they're not really sure. Now, this isn't a huge concern if you are not a pregnant woman. If you're a pregnant woman, pregnant women all the time take folate supplements to make sure that little baby that's growing inside of them is developing a proper spinal cord. So like, if you're a man like me, this is not obviously something that you're overly concerned about. However, I still think about this, about how Depakote is doing something with the folate in my body. The science isn't perfectly understood, but I decide to take a folate supplement. I don't take specifically just folate, but I just take a normal multivitamin, and one of the components of that multivitamin is folic acid. So I make sure that I'm getting enough folic acid every day just to try to combat some of that side effect profile that, quite frankly, we don't even really understand. But, I just kind of figure it's better safe than sorry. But thank you for the question all the way from Chile. All right, next question. So this person reached out to me asking me, hey, do you think it would be a good idea if I started taking lithium that I bought over the counter, not prescribed from a doctor, to help improve my depression? I would highly advise against this. Lithium, while it can be very beneficial for people with bipolar disorder, it can even be beneficial for people with depression. It's a dangerous drug. It really wreaks havoc on your liver, and it can cause diabetes insipidus over time if you take this long enough. Essentially, it's killing your kidneys. Slowly. It's a gnarly drug. It's effective, but really, if you're on this drug, you want to be closely monitored by a physician to make sure you're not, they're measuring your kidney function, they're measuring how much antidiuretic hormone is going on in your body, because these things are important. If these things start to go out of whack, you can really start to essentially pee out too much sodium from your body and really start to have really, really negative, kind of scary effects on your body. So, if you're in a situation where you're considering taking lithium over the counter, I would say, hey, save that money and go just talk to somebody. Talk to a licensed practitioner. Maybe lithium is an appropriate drug for you, but even if you are, I don't think trying to dosage yourself is a good idea. And also, I think you should have a lot of functioning tests and labs monitored throughout that process, just to make sure it's not having negative impacts on your body. And also, that practitioner might feel that another medication is better for you. So thank you so much for the question. I don't want to be mean, but I would strongly encourage you to not take lithium on your own, and please just take it from a practitioner. And that wraps up this episode of Ask Me Anything, Mental Health in the DMs episode. Short little episode for you. I have a couple episodes coming up real soon with some colleagues of mine that I really think are interesting people. I really think you guys are going to like it. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to send me questions. I have more questions that I could have dug through my email, but I didn't want to ramble for too long here. I have my dog Winter just waiting outside for me to take her on a nice little run. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. You really make creating this podcast, something I'm really proud of, and it really brings me a lot of joy and gratification. So thank you for all of you out there. If you enjoy this podcast, do me a favor, share it with your friends, give it a rating on whatever you're listening on. And yeah, thank you so much for all your support.